Tenet.
Yes,
We went to see Tenet.
we did.
Christopher Nolan film. Only recently just came out. What did you think?
I thought it was really good. I was kind of, from the look of the trailer, I was kind of expected to be a lot more confused than I actually was. Like, I mean, after Inception, there was really no limit to how confused I could be in a movie. Because that was a really confusing movie, so it was like...
That's the thing, anyway, because normally time travel movies tend to be a bit confusing anyway, but the fact that it's Christopher Nolan as well kind of makes you go, oh well, this is probably going to confuse the life out of us.
Yeah.
And it does a little bit, to be fair, when it starts off, it does.
Oh yeah, it is. It doesn't really start explaining everything until I'd say about halfway through, properly.
Yeah.
I would say about halfway through is when is the first time you'd probably go, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
But then,
And it does it again and again and again and again.
Yeah, and then they add something else and something else and something else, and then you're like, oh my god, just stop, Christopher Nolan. We get it, you're like some kind of genius or psychopath, we don't know yet, but still.
Yeah. The thing I noticed as well was that it seemed to tone back on some of the sort of ambiguity of it. Where it was like, Inception was all about sort of, what does this mean, what does that mean, are they in the dreams, are they not in the dreams, and all that stuff, whereas this one it was kind of like...
Makes it clear, doesn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't all that ambiguous.
Yeah. Although it does end, I would say, in kind of... Because it's not until afterwards that I think you realise that it all ties together.
Yeah.
Because the ending in the beginning...
Spoiler alert. Just to be safe, we'll put a spoiler alert in.
Yeah, and we'll put that in the beginning. But the ending and the beginning tie together.
Yeah.
Because... Can I just talk about it briefly? Because we put a spoiler alert, I can just talk about it really fast.
Yeah.
So when Robert Pattinson's character leaves, we know he's going to die eventually in his timeline, but I don't think I realised until after you mentioned that it was him at the beginning that saved the other guy.
That's the thing, it's like...
So like you don't know when he actually...
And that's what's interesting about that bit where he's going off and he's leaving him, is that, because he makes a point of going, right, well, to me this is the end of the friendship, but to you it's the beginning of the friendship.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it's weird when you think about it, because it's also the end of the friendship to John David Washington's character, who's literally only called the protagonist. I'm only just saying that now, he's only called the protagonist.
Does he actually have a name? Does he actually ever get called anything in the film?
That's what I mean, that's what I'm trying to think of his name, but I can't remember what his name was. Refers to himself as the protagonist a bunch.
That's kind of like a weird spy thing, but...
Yeah, well, that's what, it's weird how it makes you think, and it's quite cleverly written in that every single thing that happens, every single little event that happens is part of the bigger picture. Like when she says she saw a woman that he was cheating on her with jumping off the boat, and then later on it turns out that it wasn't.
A random woman, it was her jumping
off the boat, yeah.
Well, she said, didn't she? She actually said, which was something I didn't pick up on until afterwards. She saw the woman jump off the boat, and then she didn't hear from her husband for 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
She didn't hear from her husband a while, and obviously that was because...
I think that was a bit that confused me, was Kenneth Branagh. He was really good, but there was just times when I didn't know which version of Kenneth Branagh it was. Either
if it was
the guy
early or if it was...
Yeah.
I feel like that was done purposefully though. I think he was the confusing factor in it because I guess the way...
He was the problem, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I guess the way I took it was that the audience are learning at it at the same time the protagonist is learning about it. So it's still very new to us, so we don't fully understand it, whereas he was the person that discovered it.
Yeah.
So he probably knows more about it. That's just what I think, because it boggles my mind and I try to think too much about it.
That's the thing, it's one of the things where once you get it, it's easier just to understand it, because the more you think about it, the more your mind will go.
Yeah, I think the more you try to understand it and explain it,
the harder your mind will start playing.
Because you're like, but wait, is that right? Is that wrong? Have I just... It's like, that was actually an example with Kenneth Branagh when... Because by that point in the movie, I would say about 3/4 of the way through, maybe halfway through, it might have been that early, but we were like, okay, I know you and me well, we got it. I could tell the look over and you were like, yes, I get it. And then there was a scene where Kenneth Branagh, they're in that kind of like the jewel room.
Yeah.
He's in it, but then he comes through, but he's still there, and it's like obviously.
One point is moving forward in time, the time is moving.
But that was the first time we had fully seen that happen.
But that's the other thing about that thing as well, is that one world is moving in
reverse.
One reverse and the other one's moving in the other one, so it's kind of like you've got to try and figure out which one.
Yeah.
And it's really confusing.
I would say that's the most confusing part, because the end fight as well. I know you said you were particularly confused about.
Yeah, the red and blue teams.
Yeah. Because I thought the blue team went out. The way it made it seem to me is that the blue team had gone first to scope out the thing. They were going backwards. They were in reverse. So they would take all the information they learned, go back and give it to red team, so red team can go forward.
Yeah.
That's what it made it seem to me, but the confusing thing with that is they were both there at the same time.
Yeah.
Red was going in as blue was leaving, and so you were like, what?
Yeah.
But I think that's what it was. Might not be, like, it might be completely wrong, might be the other way around, but...
So, let's talk about some of the portrayals. Obviously the big names were John David Washington as the protagonist, Robert Pattinson's obviously in it as Neil. Obviously there's a bit of a tribute about that, because when he was making this film, that's when he got the call about playing Batman.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Debicki played Kat, and Kenneth Branagh played Andre Sator. But also it's got Aaron Taylor-Johnson in this, Michael Caine, Clemens Posey, I think that's the name, Dimple Kapadia. That's all the cast you really need to know, isn't it? Even Michael Caine's role's not very big in it.
I was surprised with Michael Caine in it. So like, you have to like remember as well this movie that the cast members, not only were they doing things which I'm sure were hard anyway, like the fight scenes, just ordinarily, but then they'd also have to go and go backwards. So like, I know John David Washington, that fight scene he did, where he did it ordinarily, which was confusing because there was one going backwards and one going forwards, but then you also found out that he had to do it in reverse. It was actually him
him fighting himself.
Yeah, him fighting himself in reverse. So there was one person doing it in reverse, the other person doing it forwards, and then they had to do it from the other perspective of the person in the suit, which was probably just a random stunt guy, doing it forwards, and then John David Washington doing it backwards.
Yeah.
And it was actually him doing it backwards, and him doing a fight scene backwards.
Yeah.
Like how...
It's clever, yeah, it's really clever. I think obviously Robert Pattinson was really good as well.
Yeah. Robert Pattinson, I feel like, just added to the ambiguity of this movie so much, because obviously you realise that he knew more than he was letting on.
Yeah. And
he was explaining stuff, but not in a way that was understandable at that moment in time. And so when it came away, it was like...
So he's like a physician, isn't he? He's like a physics...
Yeah.
Not a physician, he's like a physics major or something, whatever Americans call them.
Something like that, yeah.
And he's like, he studied the way the time works in a non-linear sense, because obviously it says in this, you can't think of it as a line, because if you do, you'll never get it. So you've got to try and think of it as sort of constantly changing, which is what he tries to explain, but obviously to a person who hasn't studied physics, that doesn't seem honest. But he does make an effort to try and almost dull it down a bit, which is good, because, you know, you need things like that in a film like this.
Yeah, like, I feel like it was clever how, I feel like it showed him as, like, a smart, like, really smart person, because he was saying stuff in, like, a really, like, intellectual way. I feel like everyone, including the characters, were like, English please? Like, and then you'd have to...
Yeah.
I think it's just credit to not only the characters, but to the writing. Like, again, Christopher Nolan is genius, borderline psychopath. The fact he thought of this himself, like, he wrote and directed this movie. The fact he thought of this in his own mind.
It's one of them things as well where you can see that he's gone to all, like, the producers and that, he's gone, I want to make a movie, and they're just going, here, take all of our money.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can just tell, because it's, despite the fact that there's only 4 characters in it, still seems like a bit, I mean, Aaron Taylor-Johnson shows up.
I know.
And just kind of, he just kind of saves the day a couple of times, doesn't he? And
it's just, like, he comes in and he knows everything about it somehow already. That was, I feel like it was quite cool though. Aaron Taylor-Johnson was kind of one of the mysterious characters that you don't, even now, I don't actually. Did it actually explain how he knows about it?
Yeah, because he was hired by the same thing. They were all working for him.
Yeah, I think the thing that I left curious about with this movie was who were the people from the future sending back.
Him?
No, I get he created Tenet, John David Washington's character,
Yeah.
but who were the people that were sending the stuff back for Kenneth Branagh's character to find to? I know, but it was somebody else. Kenneth Branagh wasn't the first person to send them back.
I thought it was. I thought that's how it was.
No, I don't think he was, because it showed you a flashback of him as I assume a teenager, digging up something, and I assumed there was somebody else. And then because how would he have created all this without?
Well, that's the time travel thing that you can't. That's the egg and chicken thing that you shouldn't try and figure out which one came first. But if Kenneth Branagh from the future has the stuff that he needs to send back to himself, then he automatically creates himself at a younger age in order to the future
Oh
to
no,
send him
actually,
back.
I feel like I've just was it not a scientist who accidentally discovered it? That last John David Washington's character kept on going to, the older woman, can't remember her name. I'm sure we should mention the scientist, a female scientist that discovered how to invert objects.
Yeah, and she killed herself.
She killed herself so that someone wouldn't get her replicated, but she sent back. I'm pretty sure that was it. I might have just remembered it.
I can't remember. Then it was like a week or so ago that we saw it.
Yeah, I was sure that's what it was, though. It might not be. Even then, though, it's like you leave it, you watch it, and you still discover new things.
Yeah. It's definitely a film like all Christopher Nolan films that you need to go and see more than once. And we've only seen it once. We haven't been to see it again since. It was really good though. I was good.
It was really good. I feel like it was, even though like just going against like Robert Pattinson, the fact he like died, it was upsetting. Yet it wasn't upsetting, and it's confusing to me how that's possible.
Because that bit at the end where he's walking off, that's him going to die. He's going to die.
But he's going to do other things as well.
No, that's him literally, because he's going there to get inverted, so that he can go and help them.
No, but he has to go back and he has to save John David Washington.
That's what he's going to do.
Yeah.
So he's
no, at the beginning, because we saw him at the beginning of the movie as well, the very, very beginning. So when did he do that?
Yeah, but not dressed up. Like the way he was dressed up at the end was what he was wearing when he got killed.
Oh, I just thought.
That just means at some point he goes back and he helps them.
Right, it's before that point, you think, okay.
Yeah.
It was because it's weird though, because it's like. It's one of those weird moments where, like, at first I didn't really see, like, the relevance of. Because the body was there and I was like, oh, there's just the body there.
I knew straight away.
It was one of those moments when, like, I saw that Neil was obviously the character's name. He reinverted himself, and he went back, and I was like, did he just do that to go forward? And then obviously he died, and I was like, ugh, big gasp. But I wasn't sad though, because I was like, okay, I don't know why I wasn't sad. It's one of those confusing things where it was like, because it was so well done.
Yeah, because it makes a point of going, well, okay, so it might seem like it's something to be sad about, but he's not worried about it or anything, because he knows he's taken a crucial step in preventing what would have been the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like, so he's not even remotely sad about what he has to do. It's quite a heroic thing, yeah.
And plus as well, I guess he also explains to John David Washington's character that he's the one that created Tenet.
Yeah. So
he's crucial. If he dies, then.
At that point, when I was watching it, I was sitting there and because it got to that bit and they were all sort of friendly with Aaron Taylor Johnson's character. At first I thought Aaron Taylor Johnson was going to betray them, and I was like, okay, well that makes sense because you need another twist right at the end. He was like, no, his twist is that he's giving them the wink, and he's like, if I find you again, I'll kill you, but I'm not going to look hard. And you kind of like, oh, okay.
Because the promise he made to them to die, yeah.
Yeah. There was that bit, but I was sitting there in the cinema and I was going, something else has got to happen here. Something big has got to happen because if it didn't end the way it did, I would have been like, well, they needed something else at the end.
Yeah.
And the fact that he says, all right, then who hired you? And I was kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And Robert Pattinson's character goes, I would have thought it was obvious. It was you, and I was like,
oh my god.
Oh, it makes sense. Of course it does. And like that one That one bit, it was really, really clever, and it's almost, who else could it have been? And it was like,
I know, there
you
was
kind of
no other
like,
characters,
no one
was
else
there?
could have been him. The only thing, I could turn around and go, oh, but Neil is actually Michael Caine, and it's like, well, that was just a bit silly, but the only character that could have been John David Washington. And then the whole thing at the end is that he was trying to figure out who he was secretly working for, and it turns out he was secretly working for himself,
Yeah.
but himself in the future. And it's like,
Yeah, it's clever, isn't it?
it's really clever. It's a really clever ending, and I thought it was, despite the fact it's a time travel movie, which has been done tons, it was a really original take on a time travel movie, because it's not, essentially, it's not time travel. It's one person moving backwards through forward moving time.
Yeah.
That's what's weird about it. It's not.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It is confusing to talk about.
It's hard. It's hard just to try and explain it. If you haven't seen the film, you won't get it, because it's. So you've got the forward moving world that we're in, then you've got the backwards moving world that you can sort of go into if you need be.
Yeah.
But the machine that you use makes you go backwards.
Yeah.
Makes you inverted, but you're still moving backwards in a linear time, like not in a linear time, in a forward moving time. Or you can say go into the backward moving time, but you might be moving forward in that time.
Yeah. So like to them, when they're inverted, it's like as to them they're moving forwards, but everything around them is going backwards. But to the people that are actually moving forwards, like through a linear time, the people that are inverted appear to be going backwards.
Yeah. That's why John David Washington,
Confusing
when he goes into the inverted world, everything is different. All the laws of physics change.
Yeah.
Because things like heat obviously goes backwards, so it gets instantly cold.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like
that was cool. I felt like
it's really. That was the bit where I kind of went, right, okay, that's me. I'm lost completely.
Yeah.
But then once I kind of had to think about it a little bit, I kind of went, okay, well, I kind of understand it. Things like friction don't happen because
it's not
actually,
friction has to be
it's slowing down
yeah.
rather than speeding up, so friction's going backwards. And it's kind of, that's the kind of thing that you sit there and you're trying to figure it out, and it makes it hard to understand, but it's, once you sort of wrap your head around it, it is sort of understandable.
I feel like credit to Christopher Nolan as well. He spaced the movie out in a way that made it really, he didn't throw everything at you. He gave you like one bit of information that was confusing. He waited a bit and then explained it. And like he gave you time to adjust before he gave you something else that was confusing. So I felt like it.
And this is another example where Robert Pattinson has lost the Twilight shackles that all of the actors in that film has, because he was really good. He was really, really good. Obviously he's a good actor anyway, and people
people somehow don't realise he's a good actor.
We've talked about it in other videos. Obviously he's a good actor. He's a really good actor. And he might be my spirit animal as well. Have you never seen him where he goes to a film festival, it's showing a film that he's in, and he's like,
but he's falling asleep in it.
Falling asleep. He's obviously a good actor, and he was really good in this, playing essentially what is, the basic Englishman. That's what he was, wasn't he? Hello, how are you? Yes. Oh yes, well, not exactly. And he does all this with his hands, and it's very English.
He's kind of it's weird because it makes him appear to be the brains of the operation, but you actually find out that John David Washington in the future is the brains of the operation that.
But basically, to try and explain it, John David Washington explained it to Neil, who then has to explain it to him, so that he can explain it to Neil in the future, so that Neil can explain it to him again in the past, and that's the
endless cycle.
That's the endless loop. That's what I mean. That's how confusing the film can get. But John David Washington was really good. He was a really good protagonist, as I've already said. I really like it. It was one of my favourite scenes in the film, actually, that kitchen scene where they're all about to beat him up, and outside, because like all these thugs sort of come on, and they're all like, "Oh, we're going to beat you up now," and he's kind of like, "Oh, okay." And outside there's Kat, Elizabeth Debicki's character, she's sitting in the back of the car, and there's a thug in the front. He's going, "Your husband wants you to see what happens when you misbehave." And then he has this fight scene, John David Washington, where he easily beats them all up, doesn't he? Beats them all up easily, and then she's kind of sitting there crying, the woman, she's going, and then one of the thugs flies out the back door, and then John David Washington comes out and he goes, like the James Bond thing. I was like, that was really cool. That That was really
Yeah.
cool. But the thug in the car with the woman kind of goes because he doesn't want
Yeah.
he doesn't want to see someone being a badass. And I was like,
It was really cool.
that's a really good scene.
It was also like, I liked the subtle humour throughout the movie. It wasn't so much that it distracted you from what was going on, but it was enough to the point where it was realistic to these characters experiencing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like,
It was as much humour as it could be for a movie where you're trying to
understand.
understand the time travel
Yeah.
movie. That's the thing, isn't it? If you were moving forward in a backwards moving time, would you go back in time?
Well, technically you're going back in.
You would be going forward in time, wouldn't you? So if you were moving backwards in a forward moving time, you would be going back in time. But if you were moving forwards in a backward moving time, you'd be going forward in time. You'd be going to the future. So if you're moving forward in the backwards phase, backward moving time, you'd be going to the future.
Yeah, so if you're inverted in the linear, ordinary, the way we experience time, then yeah.
You would, if you were moving backwards in the forward phase, in the forward moving time, you'd be going back in time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're moving forward in the inverted time, you'd be going forward in time. Yes.
No. If you're going forward in the inverted time, you're going backwards.
No, you wouldn't be going forward in time because they're all moving backwards, and time is moving back, but you're not. You're going forward. So what would eventually happen is you'd get to the point where you would go back into the machine, but you would be in the future. Whereas in the other one, everything's moving forward, but because you're moving backwards, you're going backwards in time. This is what I mean. It's one of the things where when you try and think about it, your brain will hurt. And it's kind of like, that's literally the point. One other thing as well that's worth saying is that Kenneth Branagh was a good bad guy as well. Kenneth Branagh's a very good actor, and that doesn't need to be said any more than it really has.
I wouldn't have been very surprised Kenneth Branagh was in the movie altogether. I know this is a Christopher Nolan movie, and Christopher Nolan obviously loves Kenneth Branagh. But I didn't know he was going to be in it. And so when I saw him, I was like, oh, nice. And then obviously he's kind of that weird bad guy where he's not like, ha ha ha, sort of villain monologue, ha ha ha.
He's bad because he's dying, isn't he?
He's dying, and he doesn't want the world to go forward without him. So he's really just selfish, isn't he?
But it says earlier on in the movie that no one can have his wife unless he can have her. No one can have his son unless he can have him. And it's kind of like, okay then, well, if I can't have the world, then no one can.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, that's why he's trying to destroy the world. And it's like, yeah, he's not a sort of rubbing the cat sort of villain.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's really, if anything, it's sad, really, when you think about it. Like, I always feel bad for people that are so, like, selfish in a way that makes them bad people. In that kind of way. Because it's kind of like, the guy's dying, and he's like, you know, just lighten up a bit, man, come on.
Lighten up when you're dying?
Well, you know, there are people, you know what I mean, it's like he's dying, like, you could, you know, accept it, come to terms with it, you don't have to destroy the world.
Yeah, it's true. But, you know. Alright, anyway. So that's our review. What number would you give it out of 10? What rating would you give it out of 10?
Probably like 8.5?
8.5 out of 10.
I really liked it. Even though I don't fully understand it, and I doubt that I probably will fully understand it. I feel like that's the point. I don't feel like you're supposed to understand it.
Yeah.
And I like that about a movie. I like the fact that
The ambiguity.
Yeah, I like movies like that. What would you give it, Sean?
I'll give it a 7.9. I think Inception, I would still probably prefer Inception because yeah. But I do really like this movie as well. I'm not saying that I love Inception and I hate Tenet because I really, really enjoyed Tenet. I really liked it. But it's really original. It's a really original take on time travel. Christopher Nolan's obviously ridiculously clever to come up with a film like that.
So, 8.5, 7.9, which gives us a total of, mathematical genius moment here, 8.2. To date, out of all the movies we've reviewed, is the highest, which I think is well deserved, to be fair. It was an incredible movie.
I think when people say things like Francis Ford Coppola stuff like that when they say about people being like the greatest directors of all time, like like Quentin Tarantino and stuff like that, and Martin Scorsese. I think Christopher Nolan has created an aura around him where whenever he makes a film, I have to go and see it. I have to see the Christopher Nolan movie.
Which is odd considering he hasn't made many movies. We were talking about this. He hasn't made that many movies compared to other directors out there.
Because he's like Quentin Tarantino, isn't he? Where he like, when he starts making a movie, he just wants to put all of his effort into that one movie, as opposed to sort of like J.J. Abrams has like 5 or 6 projects moving all at once.
Yeah, he's in like post for some, pre for others.
Yeah, and it's like, whereas Christopher Nolan wants to just produce that one thing.
Which, I mean, has been very effective for him.
Quite admirable as well.
Despite the fact that, like, the likes of Dunkirk, for whatever reason, it didn't get that.
There's a few.
People were kind of torn on it, weren't they? Some people loved it, some people hated it.
Well, the thing is, he done the Dark Knight trilogy, which is universally acclaimed. Everyone loves Dark Knight trilogy. Then he done Inception, which again is universally sort of loved. Everyone likes it, but everyone sort of didn't understand it.
Yeah. Again, probably intentional.
Yeah. Then he did things like he did Dunkirk. He done Interstellar, which is another film that he done that got a lot of mixed reviews.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think what he did after that. What did he do after Dunkirk? It must be this one. It must have been Tenet.
I think, I don't think he's done any other movies.
I'm trying to think of other films that he's done. But I think this one will be a lot more like the Batman, where it'll be everything will be. It's hard to find something wrong with the film.
Yeah.
It's like I've been trying to find something that I didn't. That's what my only issue with the film was. Sometimes the sound design wasn't on point.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the sound effects around them was too loud and you couldn't hear what they were saying. So like there was a point at the beginning where he had this mask on, but I suppose when you think about it, if it's gunfire and his mask on, you probably wouldn't hear what people were saying.
Yeah, so maybe he was trying to be a little more realistic.
Yeah, but it was like he had this mask on and he said something and you didn't know what he was saying.
Was that when he was talking, he was saying that code, wasn't it, in the map, and you didn't hear what the code was?
And it was kind of, you need to be able to hear everything that he said. So as much as, if it was done intentionally and it was supposed to be realistic, that you wouldn't hear someone talking, then fair enough. But in this kind of movie, you need to hear what they're saying, because it's cool. Because it's, obviously every little thing is vital to the story.
Yeah.
But that was the only issue that I found with it, was sometimes the sound.
Even then though, it was only like occasionally.
Yeah, it was maybe 2 or 3 times in the whole film, that's it. But it was kind of like, that was it. That was the only bad thing. Oh, I can't breathe. That was the only bad thing that I found with the film. That's it. Did you find anything bad with it?
No, not really, I don't think. Also, one thing we didn't talk about, the fact there's no CGI in this movie whatsoever.
Oh yeah,
no CGI, whatever, this is all done.
Practical effects.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
It's, considering the fact that they're inverted things and they're going backwards, and you actually got people to, it's weird, it's just...
Well, obviously you don't need CGI to move people backwards, you just...
I know, but he didn't do that though.
He did once or twice.
Once or twice. There were
certain shots that you have to have done backwards.
Yeah, well, there was loads of people, but when it was just one person, it tended to just be them people doing them going backwards in a way that made it. Yeah.
The impressive thing is that there's no CGI. CGI is when it's like animated. Obviously, there was no CGI. It was all practical effects, and especially the thing that I said was that there's bungee jumping off the side of a building.
Climb up a building and go down a building.
Yeah, and there's also a plane being crashed into a building, which is blooming impressive when you think about it. That there's no CGI, but that's one of Christopher Nolan's sort of trademarks, isn't it? He doesn't like CGI, which again is cool.
Which is again another
reason that Christopher Nolan's really cool. I hope I meet Christopher Nolan one day. Shake his hand.
Yeah, you'd probably have a fangirl moment, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'd watch that again. To be honest, I'd probably chop it off and put it in one of my cases.
Oh my god.
The hand that touched Christopher Nolan. Or I could just take Christopher Nolan.
You should just steal Christopher Nolan.
Yeah. Just steal Christopher Nolan. Anyway, that's our Tenet review.
Christopher Nolan go missing.
Should Christopher Nolan go missing? We know who it was. Yeah. That was our Tenet review.
Our first of modern movie review.
Yeah. We'd have to. I would highly recommend going and see Tenet. If you like those.
If you can as well.
Yeah, obviously stay safe. Stay safe at the minute, especially now because
going up
it's
again.
going up again. Well, as of when we're recording this, it's going up again. We don't know when this is going to go up, so it's, who knows. So yeah, that was our Tenet review. What did you think? Let us know down in the comments. Is there any modern films you want us to go and see? We'll try and go and see them and try and review them. Let us know down in the comments.
Or if we're just completely wrong about this movie, we might discover something new that we just...
It might not even be about time travel.
We sat here and we're all very confident, like, oh yeah, like time, all this, all that, and all this, and
if
we might completely miss...
If you notice something in the movie that we didn't mention, let us know down in the comments. Because you may very well blow our minds. Because this movie is still blowing our minds the more we think about it, which is really cool. And again, Christopher Nolan. Well done, Christopher Nolan.
We should put like a clapping effect.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan.
I'll tell you what, let's put a clap effect in, right? Whoever does it in the audio. We'll put a clap effect in, we'll just edit you out and put Christopher Nolan next to me. Thank you, Christopher Nolan. Thank you. Thanks for watching.
I need to know I'm not alone. Now take it home as the night begins.